It didn't sound like something important being thrown away. No crash. No argument. No dramatic moment that would make anyone stop and look. Just a soft, careless thud. That was the exact sound my grandmother's last gift made when it hit the bottom of the trash bin. I was standing near the kitchen doorway when it happened, half inside, half outside, like I always was in that house, present, but never really included. The bundle had still been in my hands seconds before. I hadn't even untied the faded cloth wrapped around it. I hadn't had the chance to ask what it was, or why she gave it to me instead of anyone else. My father didn't hesitate. He didn't even ask. He just took it. "It's useless," he said, brushing his hands together like he'd just gotten rid of something dirty. His tone wasn't angry or emotional. It was worse than that, indifferent. "Your grandmother lived like she had nothing. What could possibly be in there?" I opened my mouth slightly, instinctively, but no words came out. Because I already knew. Nothing I said would matter. My mother didn't even look up properly. She glanced at the bin, then back at her phone, a faint smirk on her face. "Probably coins or old papers," she said. "Honestly, just throw it out. We don't need more junk lying around." Junk. The word settled heavily in my chest. It wasn't just about the bundle. It never was. It was about the way they spoke about her. Like her entire life could be reduced to something small, something meaningless. Something disposable. 2 weeks before she died, my grandmother had called me into her room. I could still picture it perfectly. The curtains were half open, letting in soft afternoon light that made everything feel quieter, slower, like time itself had paused just for her. She looked smaller than I remembered, but her eyes were the same, sharp, warm, and full of something I didn't see in anyone else in that house. Understanding. "Come here," she had said gently. I sat beside her, and she took my hand in both of hers. Her grip was light, but steady, grounded. Then she placed the small cloth bundle into my lap. "For you," she whispered. I remember frowning slightly, confused. "What is it?" She smiled, but there was something deeper behind it. Something she wasn't saying out loud. "Something they won't understand?" she said. "And something you must not lose." At the time, I thought she meant it emotionally, like a memory, like strength. I didn't think it was something important in a practical way. But now, standing in the kitchen, watching my father toss it away without a second thought, that moment replayed in my mind with a completely different weight. Something you must not lose. And I had just let it go. A strange tightness filled my chest, but I forced my face to stay neutral. That was something I had learned early. How to hide reactions before they could become problems. My father glanced at me briefly, as if just remembering I was still there. "Don't look so serious," he said. "If it was important, she would have told us." That sentence hit harder than anything else. Because she didn't tell them. She told me. And somehow, even that didn't matter here. I lowered my gaze slightly and nodded. "Okay," I said quietly. It was automatic. The kind of response that kept things smooth, predictable, safe. No one questioned it. No one noticed anything off. Why would they? Dinner went on like normal. My brother talked about something he wanted, something expensive, something unnecessary, and my parents listened like it was the most important conversation in the world. They laughed, they agreed, they discussed how to make it happen. I sat there, silent, moving food around my plate more than actually eating it. No one brought up the bundle again. It was already forgotten. Just like that. But I couldn't forget it. I kept thinking about the way my grandmother looked at me that day. Not with pity, not with obligation, but with something else. Something I wasn't used to, value. In that house, everything was measured. Who was worth investing in? Who deserved attention? Who had potential? My brother always came first. His mistakes were excused, his wants were prioritized, his future was treated like something important. Mine wasn't. I was just expected to exist quietly, to not cause problems, to accept whatever was given or not given without question. And for the longest time I did, but that night, lying in bed and staring at the ceiling, something felt different. Not louder, not dramatic, just off. Like a small shift had happened inside me, one I couldn't fully explain yet. The house was quiet. The kind of silence that settles after everyone has gone to sleep, when even the walls seem to relax. I turned onto my side, pulling the blanket closer, but it didn't help. My mind kept replaying that moment, the sound, the words, the way it disappeared so easily. Useless, junk, throw it out. Something you must not lose. I sat up slowly. My heart was beating faster now, but not from fear alone. There was something else mixed in. A decision. I didn't think it through too much. If I did, I probably would have stopped myself. That's what I had always done. Overthink, hesitate, stay quiet. But this time I didn't. I slipped out of bed carefully, making sure the floor didn't creak. Every movement felt deliberate, controlled, like I was stepping into something unfamiliar. The hallway was dark, faint light spilling in from the kitchen. My breathing felt too loud in the silence, so I tried to slow it down. Step by step, I moved forward. No one stirred. Of course they didn't. No one ever noticed me unless I gave them a reason to. When I reached the kitchen, I paused for a moment. The trash bin stood in the corner, exactly where it always was. Ordinary. Unimportant. Like it couldn't possibly hold something that mattered. But I knew better. I walked toward it slowly, my fingers curling slightly at my sides. For a second, I hesitated. Because this wasn't just about taking something back. This was about going against everything I had been taught in that house. Don't argue. Don't resist. Don't make things harder than they need to be. Stay quiet. Stay small. Stay out of the way. My hand hovered over the lid. And then, without letting myself think any further, I lifted it. The smell hit me immediately. Leftovers, wrappers, things already discarded and forgotten. I swallowed hard and reached in, pushing aside whatever was on top. My heart pounded faster. For a brief, terrifying moment, I thought it was gone. That I was too late. That it had already been buried under everything else, just like they said. Panic flickered in my chest. Then my fingers brushed against fabric. I froze. Slowly, carefully, I grabbed it and pulled it out. There it was. The same faded cloth. Slightly dirtier now, slightly crumpled, but still there. Still mine. Relief rushed through me so suddenly it almost made my knees weak. I held it tightly against my chest, like if I let go, it would disappear again. In that quiet kitchen, standing alone in the dim light, something shifted inside me. They could throw things away. They could decide what mattered and what didn't. They could treat me like I was nothing. But they didn't get to decide this. Not anymore. I looked down at the bundle in my hands, my grip tightening slightly. They thought it was worthless. They thought it was nothing. But for the first time in a long time I felt something different. Not fear. Not sadness. Something steadier, stronger. And as I turned and walked back toward my room, one thought stayed with me, clear and unshakable. They had no idea what they had just thrown away. And they had no idea who I was about to become. The bundle felt heavier than it should have. Not physically, at least, not in any obvious way. But there was something about the way it sat in my hands that made it feel important. Like it carried more than just whatever was inside it. Like it carried intention. I closed my bedroom door softly behind me and leaned against it for a moment listening. Silence. No footsteps, no voices. No one calling my name. Of course not. No one ever checked on me. I let out a slow breath I didn't realize I'd been holding and walked toward my bed. The room looked the same as always, plain, quiet, almost like a temporary space rather than somewhere someone truly lived. There were no personal touches, no warmth. Just a place to exist. I sat down carefully, placing the bundle in my lap. For a few seconds I just stared at it. This was the thing my grandmother had held so tightly. The thing she had chosen to give to me, and only me. The thing my parents had dismissed without even a second thought. Something they won't understand. Her words echoed in my mind, clearer now than they had been before. My fingers moved slowly to the knot in the cloth. It was tied securely, like she had taken her time with it. Like she wanted to make sure it stayed closed until the right moment. My hands trembled slightly as I began to loosen it. I didn't know what I was expecting. Maybe old photographs, maybe letters, something sentimental, something emotional. Something that would explain why she gave it to me in a way that had nothing to do with money or anything practical. That's what I had always been taught to expect from her, simple things, meaningful but small. The knot came undone. I peeled back the cloth carefully. Inside was a small, worn-out book. I frowned slightly, lifting it out. The cover was faded, the edges slightly bent from years of use. It didn't look special. It didn't look valuable. For a brief second, doubt crept in. Were they right? Was this really just nothing? But then I remembered the way she had looked at me, and I opened it. The first page was filled with neat, careful handwriting, numbers, dates, stamps. I blinked. It took my brain a second to process what I was looking at. A savings record. I turned the page. More entries, deposits, dates stretching back years. My heart began to beat faster. I flipped another page, and another, and another. Each page told the same story, small amounts at first, then gradually larger ones. Consistent, careful, intentional. This wasn't random. This wasn't forgotten money. This was planned. My breathing became shallow as I reached the middle of the book. The numbers kept growing. And then I saw it. The total. For a moment, I genuinely thought I was reading it wrong. My eyes scanned the number again. And again. It didn't change. It wasn't small. It wasn't something you could laugh off or throw away without thinking. It was life-changing. Not the kind of money you hear about in movies. Not millions or something unbelievable. But enough. Enough to pay for education. Enough to move out. Enough to never have to depend on my parents again. My hands tightened around the book as a strange feeling rose in my chest, something between disbelief and fear. Why hadn't she told anyone? Why hadn't she said what this was? And then the answer came to me almost instantly. Because if she had, it wouldn't be mine. A cold realization settled in. If my parents had known, they would have taken it, controlled it, decided how it should be used, probably for my brother, like everything else. They would have said it was for the family. They would have said I didn't need it. They would have taken the one thing that was meant for me. My chest tightened. She knew. That's why she gave it to me quietly. That's why she didn't explain it in front of anyone else. That's why she said what she said. Don't let them decide your worth. My vision blurred slightly as emotion finally caught up with me. For the first time in my life, someone had chosen me without hesitation. Not as an afterthought. Not because there was no other option. But deliberately. I turned to the last page, my fingers still unsteady. That's when I saw it, a small note, tucked carefully between the pages. My breath caught. I pulled it out slowly, unfolding it with care. The handwriting was hers. I would recognize it anywhere. In your name, only yours. My throat tightened. When they doubt you, this will protect you. A tear slipped down before I could stop it. I pressed my lips together, trying to hold everything in, but it was no use. The emotions came all at once, shock, gratitude, sadness, and something deeper I couldn't quite name. Protection. No one had ever used that word in relation to me before. I had always been expected to handle things on my own, to endure, to accept. But this was different. This was someone looking ahead, seeing what I would face, and making sure I had something to stand on. I wiped my face quickly. Even though there was no one there to see, my gaze dropped back to the savings book. This wasn't just money. This was an escape, a chance. A future that didn't depend on anyone else's approval. And suddenly, everything in my life felt different. All the things my parents said about me, the way they treated me, the way they dismissed me, it didn't feel as final as it used to. Because now, I had something they didn't know about, something they couldn't control. A strange calm settled over me. Not excitement, not even happiness, not yet. Just clarity. I carefully wrapped the book back in the cloth, tying the knot again, this time more securely. My movements were slower now, more deliberate, more certain. I stood up and walked to my closet, pushing aside a few things until I found a place where no one would think to look. I slid the bundle deep inside, hidden behind old clothes and boxes no one had touched in years. Then I stepped back. For a moment, I just stood there, staring at the spot where I had hidden it. This was my secret now. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel powerless. I felt prepared. I walked back to my bed and sat down, my thoughts racing but focused. I wouldn't tell them. Not now, maybe not ever. Because this wasn't something they deserved to know about. This was mine, mine to protect, mine to use, mine to decide. I lay down slowly, staring at the ceiling again, but this time it felt different. The same room, the same house, but I wasn't the same person who had gone to sleep earlier. Something had shifted. Something had awakened. They still thought I was nothing. Still thought I would always depend on them. Still believed I had no future without their approval. A small, quiet thought formed in my mind. Let them, because the truth was sitting hidden in my closet, waiting. And when the time came, everything would change. Life didn't suddenly become easier after that night. Nothing around me changed. The same walls, the same voices, the same patterns that had defined my life for as long as I could remember. But something inside me had. And that made everything feel different. Mornings still started the same way, my mother calling my brother first, her voice softer, warmer, filled with a kind of patience I had never experienced. Breakfast was always prepared with him in mind. What he liked, what he preferred, what he needed for the day. I would walk into the kitchen quietly, take whatever was left, and sit down without drawing attention to myself. No one asked what I wanted. No one ever had. You should wake up earlier, my mother would say without looking at me. Maybe then you wouldn't be rushing all the time. I would nod, even if I had been awake long before anyone else. My father barely acknowledged me most days, unless there was something to criticize. Your grades better improve, he'd mutter while reading the newspaper. You're not like your brother. You need to work twice as hard just to be average. Average. That word used to stay with me all day. Now, it didn't land the same way. Because every time they spoke, every time they dismissed me or compared me, I felt something quiet rise inside me. Not anger, not anymore, something steadier, a reminder, they don't know. That thought became my anchor. They don't know what I have. They don't know what I'm capable of. They don't know what's coming. And strangely, that gave me peace. I started noticing things I hadn't paid attention to before. The way my parents invested in my brother's future without hesitation. New gadgets, extra classes, plans for university abroad, conversations about opportunities and connections. For me, there were only limits. We can't afford that. That's unnecessary. You should be realistic. Realistic meant smaller dreams, safer choices, less risk, less everything. But now, I listened differently. I wasn't absorbing their words anymore. I was observing them. Learning, planning. At night, when the house went quiet, I would take the bundle out from its hiding place and sit on my bed with the savings book in my hands. I went through every page slowly, carefully, making sure I understood everything. The dates, the deposits, the consistency. My grandmother hadn't just saved money, she had built something, something stable, something intentional, and she had trusted me with it. The first time I went to the bank, my hands were shaking so badly I almost turned back. I stood outside for a long time, staring at the entrance, my heart racing. What if something went wrong? What if they told my parents? What if it wasn't real? But then I remembered her words. When they doubt you, this will protect you? I took a deep breath and walked inside. The air felt different in there, cooler, quieter, more structured. People moved with purpose, voices low and controlled. It felt like a place where things mattered. Where numbers mattered. Where decisions mattered. Where people mattered. I approached the counter slowly, explaining what I had as calmly as I could. My voice felt unfamiliar to me, more steady than I expected. The employee took the book, checked the details, typed something into the system. Every second felt stretched. And then he looked up. Yes, he said simply. The account is active. It's in your name. My heart skipped. In my name, not shared, not controlled, not something that could be taken away with a single decision. Mine. Would you like to access it? He asked. I hesitated for just a second. Then I nodded. Yes. That moment changed everything. Walking out of the bank that day, I didn't feel powerful in a loud, dramatic way. I didn't feel like someone new. But I felt certain. Certain that my life didn't have to follow the path they had already decided for me. Certain that I had options. And certainty was something I had never had before. Back at home, nothing had changed. My brother was still the center of everything. My parents were still the same. But I wasn't reacting the way I used to. When my father criticized me, I listened. But I didn't internalize it. When my mother dismissed my ideas, I nodded, but I didn't shrink. Because in the back of my mind, there was always that quiet truth. I don't need their permission anymore. I started planning seriously. Universities, courses, living expenses, rent. I researched everything late at night, using my phone under the blanket so no one would notice. I wrote things down, calculated costs, made lists. It felt strange at first, planning a future that didn't depend on my parents. But it also felt right. For the first time, I wasn't imagining a life based on what I was allowed to have. I was imagining a life based on what I could build. Months passed, slowly but steadily, and then came the moment I had been both waiting for and dreading. My acceptance letter arrived. I got into a good university. Not the one my parents dreamed about for my brother. Not something they would brag about to relatives. But something solid. Something real. Something that could be mine. I held the letter in my hands, my heart pounding. This was it. This was the test. That evening, I brought it to them. I got in, I said, placing the letter on the table. My mother glanced at it briefly, then looked at my father. He adjusted his glasses, reading through it slowly. For a moment, there was silence. Then he sighed. "It's fine," he said. "Not great, but fine." Something inside me tightened slightly, but I stayed quiet. And then came the words I had expected. "But we can't afford this," he continued. "We've already spent too much on your brother." My mother nodded immediately. "You should look for something cheaper. Or just wait a year." Wait, delay, settle. The same pattern, the same limitations. I felt the familiar pressure building in my chest, the urge to accept, to nod, to shrink back into the role they had assigned me. But this time something held me steady, because I knew something they didn't. I looked at them calmly. "That's okay," I said. They both looked up, slightly surprised. "I'll handle it." For a second, neither of them spoke. Then my brother laughed from the side. "With what money?" My father shook his head slightly, almost amused. "Don't be unrealistic." Unrealistic. I almost smiled. Because if they only knew. If they only knew that the girl they had underestimated her entire life had already found her way out. "I'll figure it out," I said quietly. They didn't take me seriously. Of course they didn't. To them, I was still the same person. Still dependent. Still limited. Still nothing. But as I stood there, looking at them, I felt something shift into place completely. Not just a plan. Not just an idea. A decision. I wasn't going to argue. I wasn't going to prove anything to them. Not yet. Because the truth didn't need to be spoken. It needed to be lived. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of what came next. I was ready. Leaving didn't feel dramatic. There was no shouting, no final argument, no moment where everything exploded into something unforgettable. It was quiet, careful, almost invisible, just like I had always been. I packed slowly over a few days, making sure no one noticed. A few clothes at a time. Books stacked neatly into a bag I kept hidden. Important documents slipped between pages so they wouldn't be found if anyone decided to look through my things. No one did. No one ever did. That was the thing about being overlooked your entire life. When you finally start moving differently, no one questions it. They assume you're still standing in the same place they left you. The night before I left, I took the bundle out again. The cloth was still slightly worn, but now it felt steady in my hands. Familiar. Like something that belonged to me in a way nothing else ever had. I opened it carefully, flipping through the pages of the savings book, letting my eyes move over the numbers that had once felt unreal. They didn't feel unreal anymore. They felt like a plan, like a foundation, like a promise that had already been kept. My grandmother had done her part. Now it was my turn. I wrapped it again, more securely this time, and placed it in my bag, not hidden anymore. Protected. I slept for a few hours that night, but it wasn't deep sleep. My mind kept moving. Running through everything, what I needed to do, what could go wrong, what I would say if someone stopped me. No one did. Morning came like any other. My mother called my brother for breakfast first. My father read the newspaper. No one noticed that my bag was heavier than usual. No one asked why I lingered near the door a second longer. "I'm going out," I said simply. My mother nodded without looking at me. "Don't be late." That was it. No questions, no concern, no idea. I stepped outside, closing the door behind me, and for a moment, I just stood there. The air felt different, lighter. Or maybe that was just me. I didn't look back. Not because I was trying to be strong or dramatic, but because there was nothing behind me that I needed to hold on to anymore. Everything I needed, I was carrying with me. The first few days on my own felt strange. Not scary the way I had always imagined, but unfamiliar in a quieter way. There was no one telling me what to do. No one criticizing the way I moved, spoke existed. No one watching. At first, the silence felt almost too big. My apartment was small, bare. Just the basics. A bed, a table, a chair. But it was mine. Every corner of it, every decision inside it. I handled everything carefully: rent, tuition, daily expenses. I kept track of every amount, every withdrawal, every payment. Not out of fear, but out of respect. This wasn't just money. This was trust. And I wasn't going to waste it. University started soon after. Walking into campus for the first time, I felt something I hadn't expected. Not insecurity. Not fear. But possibility. No one there knew me. No one had already decided who I was. No one was comparing me to my brother. I wasn't the less important one. There, I was just me. And that was enough. I kept my life simple. I studied. I worked part-time when I could, not because I had to, but because I wanted to build something of my own beyond what I had been given. I didn't tell anyone about the savings. I didn't tell anyone about my family. That part of my life felt distant now, like something I had already outgrown. Months passed, then a year. I didn't go back home. Not once. There were calls at first, missed ones. Occasional messages that felt more like obligations than concern. "Where are you? You should visit. You're being dramatic." I didn't respond. Not because I was angry, but because I finally understood something important. Distance wasn't punishment. It was protection. And I needed that. Life started to take shape in ways I hadn't imagined before. I made decisions without fear of being shut down. I spoke without second-guessing every word. I existed without feeling like I had to justify it. And slowly, quietly, I started to build something real. Then one day, everything shifted. Not for me, for them. I didn't hear it directly at first. It came through a relative. A short message. "Your father's business is in trouble." I stared at the screen for a long time, reading it over and over. In trouble. That could mean anything. But something in my chest tightened, not out of panic, but recognition. The kind of recognition that comes when you know exactly how fragile something is. Because you've seen the cracks before anyone else did. More messages followed over the next few days. Debt, loss, failed deals. It unraveled quickly, faster than I expected. And then came the part that didn't surprise me at all. My brother left. Not officially. Not in a way that would make people talk. But he distanced himself, stopped showing up, stopped helping, stopped being available. The same way I had once been expected to disappear quietly when I wasn't needed. Except now they needed someone. And for the first time in my life, that someone was me. My phone rang one evening. I looked at the screen. My mother. I hadn't heard her voice in over a year. For a second I considered ignoring it, letting it ring, letting it end. But instead I answered. "Hello." There was a pause on the other end. Then her voice, softer than I had ever heard it before. "Can you come home?" Just that. No accusations. No lectures. No control, just a request. Something in that alone told me everything had changed. "What happened?" I asked, even though I already knew. She hesitated, then said quietly, "We need you." Those words settled heavily in the silence between us. "We need you." Not your brother, not anyone else, me. I closed my eyes for a brief second. A year ago, those words would have meant everything. They would have felt like validation, like finally being seen. But now they felt different, not powerful, not emotional, just late. "I'll come," I said, not out of obligation, not out of guilt, but because I needed closure. Because some things don't end properly unless you face them directly. The house looked the same when I arrived. Same walls. Same door. Same space that had once made me feel so small. But the people inside it, they were different. My mother looked tired. My father smaller somehow. Like something had been taken from him that he didn't know how to replace. For a moment, no one spoke. We just stood there, looking at each other. And in that silence, everything was clear. The balance had shifted. Completely. My father was the first to speak. His voice wasn't as firm as I remembered. "If you have anything saved, he said slowly, avoiding my eyes. We need it. I looked at him. Really looked at him. And for the first time, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel controlled. I didn't feel like I had to prove anything. Because everything I had already built spoke for itself. And in that moment, I realized something simple and undeniable. They weren't calling me back because they finally understood my worth. They were calling me back because they had run out of options. And that changed everything. For a moment, no one spoke. The air inside the house felt heavier than I remembered, like it was holding years of unspoken things that had finally started to surface. I stood near the doorway, the same place I used to stand before. Half inside, half outside, but this time it felt different. Before, it was hesitation. Now, it was choice. My father sat down slowly, as if the simple act required more energy than it should have. My mother remained standing, her hands tightly clasped together, eyes flickering between me and the floor. If you have anything saved, he repeated, his voice lower this time, we need it. The words hung in the air, fragile and desperate. I looked at him carefully. This was the same man who had once dismissed everything about me without a second thought. The same man who decided what was valuable and what wasn't. The same man who had taken something from my hands and thrown it away because it didn't meet his expectations. And now, he was asking. Not ordering, not demanding, asking. I felt no rush of anger, no satisfaction, no urge to throw his words back at him the way he had done to me so many times. Instead, there was a strange calm inside me. Because this moment wasn't about revenge, it was about truth. Do you remember Grandma's savings book? I asked quietly. The question seemed to catch him off guard. His brows pulled together slightly, and for a second, it looked like he was trying to recall something distant, something unimportant. Then it clicked. I saw it in his face. The memory, the kitchen, the moment. Wex. He hesitated, his voice faltering for just a second. Nothing. The same word. The same assumption. I nodded slowly. You threw it away. Silence, not the comfortable kind. The kind that forces people to sit with what they've done. My mother's hand moved to her mouth, her eyes widening slightly as realization settled in. My father leaned back, his expression shifting from confusion to something else, something heavier. What are you saying? He asked, though his tone suggested he was already starting to understand. I didn't rush my answer. I let the moment breathe. It wasn't nothing, I said finally. It was a savings account. In my name. The words landed slowly, like pieces of something breaking apart in front of them. My father's face changed completely. The color drained slightly. His posture stiffened. His eyes searched mine, as if trying to find some sign that I was exaggerating, misunderstanding, or lying. How much? He asked, his voice almost a whisper. I held his gaze. Enough? That was all I said, because the exact number didn't matter. What mattered was what it represented. Everything they had dismissed. Everything they had overlooked. Everything they had decided wasn't worth anything. My mother sank into the chair beside him, her breathing uneven. That could have helped us, she said softly, almost to herself. I didn't respond immediately. I let her words settle, let them exist in the space between us. Then I nodded. It could have. My father ran a hand over his face, the weight of the situation clearly pressing down on him now. Why didn't you tell us? He asked, though there was no accusation in his tone, just desperation. I almost smiled, not out of amusement, but because the answer was so simple. Because it was mine, I said. The room fell silent again. That answer didn't leave room for argument. It didn't invite discussion. It just existed. For so long, everything about my life had been treated as something that could be decided by someone else. What I deserved. What I didn't. What I should accept. But this had never been theirs. And for once, I hadn't let it become theirs. My father looked down at his hands, his fingers tightening slightly. We're in serious trouble, he said after a moment. Deb's things didn't go as planned. If you could just help, we could fix this. We could recover. Recover. The word echoed in my mind. I understood what he was asking. Not just for money. For a second chance. For things to go back to the way they were, only this time. With me filling the gap my brother had left behind, I took a slow breath. I already used it, I said. Both of them looked up immediately. What? My mother asked. I paid for my education. My apartment, my life, I continued calmly. I used it to build something for myself. The disappointment in their expressions was immediate, but it was mixed with something else too, realization. That the opportunity they were now reaching for was already gone. You should have told us, my father said weakly. We could have planned better. That was the moment something inside me shifted completely. Not anger. Not frustration. Just clarity. You had your chance to plan, I said, my voice still steady. You just didn't think it was worth it. He didn't respond. Because there was nothing he could say. Every word I spoke wasn't an attack. It was a reflection, a simple, undeniable truth. My mother's eyes filled with tears. We didn't know, she said. We didn't understand. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time I saw something I had never seen before. Not authority, not dismissal, but regret. I know, I said softly, and I meant it. They didn't know. They didn't understand. But that didn't erase what had happened. And it didn't change what I had learned from it. I'm not here to punish you, I continued. And I'm not here to remind you of everything you did wrong. I paused, letting my words settle. But I'm also not here to fix this for you. The sentence was simple, clear, final. My father closed his eyes briefly, as if accepting something he had been trying to avoid. My mother looked down at her hands again, silent now. For years, I had imagined what this kind of moment would feel like. I thought it would be emotional, intense, satisfying in a way that made everything feel balanced again. But standing there, I realized something unexpected. It wasn't about them anymore. It wasn't about winning or proving anything. It was about me and who I had become without them. I stepped back slightly, creating space between us. I hope things get better for you, I said honestly. Not as a formality, but because I didn't carry the anger I once thought I would. I just carried distance, understanding, and boundaries. No one tried to stop me when I turned toward the door. No one argued. No one asked again. Because deep down, they knew. This wasn't a decision made in the moment. This was something that had been building for years. I opened the door and stepped outside, the air hitting me differently this time. Not as an escape, but as confirmation that I had already left long before this conversation ever happened. As I walked away, I didn't feel heavy. I didn't feel guilty. And I didn't feel like I had lost anything. Because the truth was simple. They had thrown away something valuable without understanding it. And I had taken it back, protected it, used it, and built a life from it. Not loudly, not dramatically, but completely. And sometimes that's what justice really looks like. Not revenge. Not destruction. Just walking away with everything you were once told you didn't deserve. And never looking back.